another beautiful Friday, the first of the ninth month of the year 2025. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on another insightful episode of our program, Fiscal Interventions and Economic Growth on Amorgate Radio Communications. I remain your host, Titilola Ogunsona. Today, we'll be delving into the complex and multifaceted issue of income inequality. We would be discussing the nuances of income inequality. While what we'll be discussing fully is the nuances of income inequality, we need to know that achieving income equality is a crucial macroeconomic objective for governments across nations across the globe. It is essential for government to achieve income equality because it's essential for promoting economic growth in the country, social stability, well-being of citizens, among other reasons why this is important. Thus, governments of various nations strive to achieve income equality in a bid to address germane issues like poverty, income inequality, and social exclusion. So government want to ensure that the level of income equality in their countries is very high. Thus, formulating and implementing the right policies, especially fiscal policies, fiscal tools, would help redistribute income efficiently, provide a safety net for vulnerable population, help improve economic outcomes, and also help achieve higher standard of living. So what we'll be doing today, as far as time can permit us, we'll be laying context on the definition of income inequality. What does it mean? We'll be looking at various perspectives on it. We'll be looking at measurement. We're looking at global facts, on income inequality. We'll be considering countries with the highest level of income inequality. We will examine factors responsible for this pervasive issue that affects individuals, countries, and nations globally. By the way, some prefer to use the terminology income equity, but I love to stick to the terminology income equality. So we'll go on to talk about what we have on the table today, and that is the nuances of income inequality. Like I said earlier, we'll be starting with what is income inequality. On the very broad view, income inequality examines the extent to which income is evenly distributed within a population in an economy. We mentioned earlier that one of the macroeconomic objectives of government is to ensure equitable distribution of income. We want to ensure that the level of income equality, that everybody in the economy earns very well, so that the disparity between the rich and the poor is very low. So this speaks to the extent in which income is evenly distributed within members, within citizens in an economy. The other definitions, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, income inequality refers to the significant disparity in the distribution of income between individuals, groups, populations, social classes, or countries. So we want to look at, the difference between incomes of members of a particular group in a particular country. We can also define income inequality as the unequal distribution of monetary resources among individuals or groups, where comparisons can be made between average incomes of different categories, while recognizing that significant disparities may still exist within these categories. And I like this definition a lot. So, for instance, we have economists in a particular economy. You need to know that for economists in a particular economy, the average income will be different from maybe doctors in the same economy, will be different from media personalities in the same economy. Now, what you're saying that even among economists in the same country and the same economy, there could be still income disparity with people with similar educational background, similar educational certification, similar industry experience, because some of them might work in a particular, sector where they earn more, and others might work in another sector where they learn less. So within a particular strata, among a particular people with the same educational background, income inequality could still exist. I don't like to use this example at all in developing countries sometimes for even for the doctors, okay, for doctors who work in development agencies in a particular country could earn more, are likely to earn higher, while we have doctors who work within the tertiary institutions as lecturers earning far lower. Is still income inequality. And it also refers to the size of the gap between the richest and poorest member of the society. So we need to note that the wider the gap, the greater the level of income inequality in such a nation. Now, I want to also state this. Sometimes people would ask, income inequality, what inequality? Does it mean the same thing? Are they similar? Are they distinct? Do they refer to the same the same thing? Now, I want to lay context on this in terms of income inequality versus wealth inequality. So when you talk about, just like the name depicts, when you talk about income inequality, you are looking at the uneven distribution of financial income in terms of earnings, wages, salaries within a society. But when we talk about wealth inequality, we are talking about the unequal distribution of assets, not just income in this case. You're looking at savings, you're looking at property, investment among individuals, groups, or households. So not just what you earn in terms of salary, wages, we're talking about your assets, we're talking about wealth generating assets, and that's when talking about wealth inequality. And one thing is that the one similarity also that they have, wealth inequality, wealth is a broader concept, is that what the measurement for both income inequality and wealth inequality is still the Gini coefficient. So that takes me to, let's talk about how do you measure income inequality in a particular country. How do you measure between countries? How do you measure among countries in the world? How do you determine that the level of income inequality or wealth inequality in a particular country is high? There should be a standard metric for this. So we'll be talking about this next. How do you measure income inequality? In economics, the Gini coefficient, also referred to as the Gini index, or what we call the Gini ratio, is used to measure or represent income inequality within a nation. It was interestingly developed by an Italian statistician and sociologist named Corrado Gini. It's a measure of income inequality. Also, it's also a measure of wealth inequality, and also a measure of consumption inequality. So when you talk about the income inequality, wealth inequality, consumption inequality, you're actually referring to all the components of economic inequality. But our focus today is on income, more of income inequality. But when you talk about wealth inequality, is a broader, perspective of inequality. Like we said, the Gini index measures wealth disparity, income disparity within a country. It ranges from 0 to 100, and the 0 and 100 are two extreme positions. When it is 0, it indicates perfect equality. It means that everyone, in the economy has equal wealth, has equal income, which is very extreme, not likely to be the case, and when you talk about the 100, it indicates maximum, inequality. It means that one person owns all of the wealth, and it's still another extreme situation. Okay, so the Gini index, the Gini coefficient, is one measure, like I said, where you measure the level of income inequality, wealth inequality in a nation or between nations across the globe. And studies have revealed, research has revealed the causes of income inequality are quite complex, multifaceted. It varies across country. It could be particular to a particular market structure, to a particular region, continent across the globe, and it could be based on factors like market forces. It could be based on factors like tax policies, your fiscal policies. It could be based on, even educational access, among other factors. And there's some interesting facts about income inequality that I want us to talk about, today. On a global level, inequality is extreme, with the richest 1% of people in the world receiving about over 50% of global wealth. Also, bottom 50% of the population owes less than 1% of global wealth. So when it does becomes an issue to look at intensely, because this concentration of wealth can undermine economic opportunities and could actually threaten economic development of some nations. So let's look at, I'm looking at 4 facts about income inequality. The first is that the level of income inequality within nations is alarmingly increasing. Is increasing at an alarming rate. And this is interesting because statistics has shown that global inequality between countries is reducing. So what used to be the case is global inequality between countries across the globe used to be very high, but now it is reducing. However, the disparity within a country is increasing. So what are we not getting right within the economy? What are those factors responsible for this? And one of the studies I looked at, according to the World Inequality Database 2022 report, the gap between the average incomes of the bottom 50% and top 10% of individuals has nearly doubled in the past 2 decades. So it means that within countries, within nations, even within a particular country, the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider. And that's going to impact health. It's going to impact productivity. It's going to impact level of development, in a country, because you're going to look at the health, you're going to level of education. It's going to impact, the quality of workforce if you are not careful. If the gap has actually doubled, like Richard has shown, it gives us room to look at what policies are not working, what policies could be formulated, could be implemented in some climate, in some countries, to ensure that the gap between the rich and the poor within countries is reduced. Let's look at the second fact. I mentioned that we look at 4 facts about income inequality. Let's look at the second fact of income inequality. So the second fact to be considering today is that its income inequality greatly affects already disenfranchised people. We have people who are vulnerable in a particular country, in a particular society. But statistics has shown that the women, industry, the young people, informal industry workers, the elderly, these people with physical disabilities, these people are already, vulnerable in the society. And when we have high level of income inequality in such a country, those people that will be greatly affected before others, and the impact is always advanced, is always deep, is always huge at this set of people. And if you look at population, I'm sure that this set of people that mentioned, vulnerable, would actually constitute a big part of the population. And let's look at the third factor I'll be considering is that over the last decade, the world's richest 1% have gotten 54% of new wealth. I'm going to take that again. Now, over the last decade, the world's richest 1% have gotten 54% of new wealth. So the implication of what I've just said is that over the last decade, the rich are getting richer. And of course, the wealth is getting, it means the poor, are getting poorer. In some countries, in some continents, you have more people falling within the poverty line, below that poverty line. And another thing that caught my interest is that according to an Oxfam report, the world's richest 1% captured about $42 trillion of the new wealth created between December 2019 to December 2021. And that's a lot. And about $16 trillion got distributed to the bottom 99%. So it means you can see within. And interesting that even during the pandemic, those that were greatly affected, what data has shown is that the poor were greatly affected, than the world's richest. In fact, in that period, some people, the rich people got richer. And wow, let's look at the fourth fact to be considering today is that income inequality is linked to climate change. Okay, well, we'll be talking about greener environment. There is so much focus on green themes around the globe. Okay, and research has shown that every year humans emit about 6.6 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per capita. And the reality and what data has revealed is that the world's biggest emitters are the rich. Okay, because the world's poorest countries emit significantly less carbon dioxide, yet the impact of the harsh climate change is felt by the poor. So with facts like this, you will not be surprised when we have presidents of various nations, revisiting their fiscal policies, the tariff policies, the tax policies. There have been a lot of tax reform around the globe. So it's because these are issues that any government will not want to sit on gunpowder, that we want to look and address critically and strategically. Yes, we'll take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back after the break.
Harmogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Harmogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent, but will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thearmogate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.thearmogate.org. Armogate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.
If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining. Okay, thank you for joining us again today. Now, what we've been discussing today is the nuances of income inequality. We have explained what income inequality means. We are looking at facts around the globe, interesting facts about income inequality. So let's take a tour around, the top 10 countries with the highest level of income inequality across the globe. And I looked at the Business Day report of 2023, and I found this report interesting and some countries interesting. For a lot of people who always believe that when you talk about income inequality is actually more prevalent among developing nations. That is always more inherent in countries with low level of economic growth. Some also believe that sometimes when talking about income inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor in terms of income, in terms of wealth, sometimes we believe that is more in developing continents. Sometimes we believe that when a country is doing a lot of production, definitely the gap between the rich and the poor would be low. And sometimes we also believe that when the level of infrastructure in a country is inefficient, is inadequate, it bothers factors on high level of income inequality. Now this report that I'm going to give into us, the first, the 1 to 10. Number 10, we'll start with the 10th, country with the highest level of income inequality. You realize that is not, it has got nothing, it hasn't got more to do with level of infrastructure. It hasn't got more to do with the richest people in a particular country. It hasn't got to do with natural resources. But there's some interesting fact that we'll be, looking at, we'll be seeing, okay, as we unveil these countries according to the Business Day report of 2023. Okay, and at number 10, we have Indonesia, and we said that Gini coefficient ranges from 0 to 100. Okay, so 0 means perfect equality, which is very extreme, and 100, means that perfect level, very high, extreme level of income inequality. So the higher the figure, okay, the higher the level of income inequality in such a country. Okay, at number 10, we have Indonesia. And we look at Indonesia, though within this period they reckless economic growth. And when we talk about economic growth, we are talking about an increase in the productive capabilities of a country. That means the country produced more, and when they produce more, the likelihood that they could export. That means they will not be import dependent, they will be export driven. They produce more. However, we see it's so interesting to know that despite also having an increase in the level of economic growth, they had an increase, they had high income inequality with a Gini coefficient of 68. And looking at the factors that contributed to this, we had factors, that came up, like, possible factors like corruption level, limited access to education, and large informal sector. Now, the large informal sector is also a factor that we want to consider on subsequent episodes. That is there a correlation between the level of informal sector and level of income inequality? Because as you go on, you see that some countries with large level of informal sector, large informal sector, actually found their way into, this list, made this list of high level of income inequality. But we can't, deal into that or delve into that in this episode. Okay, so at number 9, this will come as a surprise to almost everyone, is Singapore. Okay, with the Gini coefficient, Gini index of 70. Okay, and you say that in this case of Singapore, it's also a case of high level of economic growth. It's also a place where we have high level of standard of living. But however, it still also lays with high level of income inequality. And you try to look at what the possible reasons could be, and the possible reasons, more of the tax regime, the road tax regime, and also the pro-business policies. And the pro-business policies, have said to favor the rich. And what was also inherent in the economy, at this point where this was taken, was that they had rising cost of living, and they also had limited social mobilities, and and all of these two factors I've mentioned, had higher, effect, significant effect on the greater population. Like I said, it's not the income inequality. It's not limited to developing economies, developing continents, like a lot of us would always assume. So that's Singapore at number 9. At number 8, we have Mexico, about 72%, Gini index, Gini coefficient, and if you look at the history, going back, to their political and economic history, you see that it's deeply rooted in, a certain degree of inequality. And we also found a significant percentage of the people living in poverty. And some of the reasons, delving into, Mexico, is that possible reasons include large informal sector, just like the case of Indonesia. That was why I mentioned that we should even look at the correlation between, the informal sector, the size of the informal sector, and the level of income inequality, it's going to be an area that one would look at much later. Okay, also possible level of corruption, and also limited access to education. At number 7, what would we have there? What country do we have there? We have India with a Gini coefficient of 73. And of course, we know the population of India is over 1 billion, and also that we also know that India has the emergence of a middle class, help the economy. However, with this, I see high level of income inequality, and also the reasons, in addition to the large informal economy prevalent also in India, unequal access to education. We also have another unique one, is the rural-urban divide. Okay, what country do you have at number 6? Now is the United States with a Gini coefficient of 75. At the time of those reports, 1% of the population, owing a significant portion of the nation's wealth. That's the United States at number 6. And the reasons that they are attributable to this include, stagnation of wages for middle class and lower class, a decline in labor unions, and of course, there's also been argued, quote unquote, that the tax policies at the time when this report was, given, argued more in favor of the rich. Okay, that's United States at number 6. At number 5, there's a tie between United States and Sweden at number 5. Okay, and that's with a Gini coefficient of 75. And this is another surprise element in this list for me. I'm sure it's going to be big for a lot of people out there too. Okay, because Sweden is a country that is quite known with a significant number of welfare policies. So you'll be asking yourself, why is Sweden in this list? Okay, yes, just like I've also saying, is that yes, Sweden is in this list because there's a growing divide in wealth distribution over the last couple of years. Level of income inequality is said to have risen, and some of the factors include a major one is the regulation of the financial market, which works more in favor of the rich or those in the upper class of the economy. So who do we have at number 4? At number 4, we have the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, with a Gini coefficient of 77. You might be wondering, why is it high? UAE is an oil-rich nation. But however, the reality and what studies have shown, results have shown, data has shown, is that the wealth, the income, revenue generated, gotten from the country's oil reserves are concentrated in the hands of a few. Yes, UAE has level of economic growth, like we will say, development. However, the issue of income inequality cuts across nations. You could be representing economic growth and yet still be experiencing high level of income inequality. So let's look at, we have a tie between UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia with a Gini coefficient of 77 in terms of income, wealth inequality, though that we have high level of economic growth and modernization. However, one major challenge is that wealth generated from oil reserves is still concentrated in the hands of a few in Saudi Arabia. At number 2, we have Brazil with the high Gini index coefficient of 81. And looking at this, the reason is that the disparity is deeply rooted in the country's colonial relations in the past. And studies have revealed that despite efforts that have been made to reduce poverty levels in Brazil, income inequality rate still remains high. And looking at some of the factors that could be responsible for this, we look at level of education access, we look at healthcare and social services. Another unique thing that stood out, for the wealth disparity rate in Brazil. Which country is at number 1? We have South Africa with a Gini index of 82. Note that South Africa is one of the most developed economies in Africa. Yet the level of income inequality is very high. I would even put it to say it's dangerously high. Now, looking at what could be responsible, one factor that is deeply rooted that cannot be expunged easily is the apartheid. The apartheid area was laced with quite a lot of discrimination, and it has had, and we say that it's still having a toll on the economic status of the country. Realize that the elite, who constitute a very small percentage of the population, enjoy and still owe significant wealth. We have majority of the population living within low income brackets, and this is evident by the low rate of employment in the country, and that means high level of unemployment. Also said some factors responsible include inadequate access to education and healthcare, and also the poverty levels. Other factors, also inherent in this economy. Research has shown that 38% of women and less than men with similar education levels. So if you have the same, similar education level, the gender factor, you end 38% of these women and less than the men counterpart, with the same even educational qualifications. In South Africa, the issue of the land ownership also there. Then COVID came, another factor. Okay, so that's South Africa with Gini coefficient of 82, which has the highest level of income and wealth inequality around the globe, according to this report. So one thing that stands clear, that income inequality is not continent based. It's not based on level of development. It's not based on level of economic growth or productive capabilities. And of course, it's also obvious that there have been historical attempts to address these disparities. Okay, and however, statistics has revealed that income inequality remains a significant challenge in today's society. So we'll be looking at other countries that have gotten it right in subsequent next episode. Specifically, the countries that have gotten it right are the countries with low level of income inequality, are the continents with low level of income inequality. What have they done right? What fiscal policies, what fiscal tools, what fiscal interventions can be deployed, or have they deployed that has worked for them? Okay, and for those still struggling with high level of income inequality, there's a need to review existing policies, particularly fiscal policies, in addressing this issue. Wow, I wish we could go on, but this is all that you will be taking on today's episode. I'll be drawing the curtain here. I hope that you have learned one or two things. We'll continue this discussion next week. Thank you so much for staying tuned. I have quite a number of quotes I want to wrap this up with, but I'll just wrap it up, with the quote from Nelson Mandela, which says that as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persists in our world, none of us can truly rest. Thank you so much. I hope you join us next week, same station, Amagate Radio Communications, on Friday, 5 p.m. WAT. Remember to join my colleagues Monday to Thursday, same time, 5 p.m. WAT. Also, you want us to take care of your training needs, institutional building needs. We want us to take care of your communication needs. We have you covered. You want to learn more about us. The website is www.thearmorgate.org. You want to learn more about us. Our social media handles are there for you. Just check us up. It's Armorgate, and you have any feedback, questions, just send a mail to contact@thearmorgate.org. Till I find my way to your devices next week, I want to say enjoy your weekend. Bye from here.